Welcome back to Pixel Project Radio. This is part 2 of our Death Stranding analysis. Looking forward to talking through the rest of this game. I'm joined again by Nick and Will from the Friday Night Gamecast. How's it going, guys?
Going well. It's going well. Thanks for having us back on here. Look, part 2, baby. Let's get into it.
What's up, Rick? I'm happy to be back. I'm happy to continue talking about this game with you. This is going to be exciting.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it too. Before we dive into the story, I wanted to talk about some stuff up front. As I was editing this last episode, I had a couple of moments where I realized that I was sounding much more negative than I had remembered feeling. I mean, don't get me wrong, I do think the first 3 episodes of this game, especially after the prologue, start to drag a little bit in terms of the pacing, and they are quite long, or at least they feel quite long. So I was definitely feeling a bit of the tedium, but I was surprised at how negative I was coming off whenever I was editing. So up front, I wanted to say I am having a much better time with this. I don't think neither of you are playing this game again for this show, right?
Yeah, I was playing through it again.
Oh, you were?
Yeah. So I was getting, because this is my first time playing the director's cut. I played it previously when it came out,
that's
the 2019 version, but I wanted to see what new things they added on for the director's cut, and it's been pretty cool so far. Some of the new additions have been nice.
That's right. You did say that. I forgot about that.
Yeah, and I definitely jumped in for the first time for the show, but I finished it just a little bit earlier than the date we're recording.
I did want to say, despite the writing, which I do still think is quite clumsy, I am having a good time. I'm having a better time now that I'm farther into the game. We had mentioned a bit before, and I think this was a point you made, Nick, about the maximalism of the UI being kind of overwhelming.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do agree with you. I will say, though, it was kind of nice to have reminders when I needed them about, how strands work in terms of the combat. I mean, how weather happens, the enemy pings. Having these reminders was kind of nice. It was still overwhelming seeing everything on the screen at all times, but I don't know. I liked having reminders now and then, so I didn't have to keep everything in my working memory, long-term memory. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that part of it is definitely more of the design behind the UI of this game. I feel like just really asks the player to do a lot more in terms of tailoring it to their individual needs. And I think for a game like Death Stranding and the length and the breadth of it, depending on how you want to play it, that's certainly warranted. In a large part of you want to go in and you want to filter for specific icons or community, built structures, if you want to use that during your traversal sequence, however you want to look at it. I think definitely it's just the ribbon, whenever there are tips on screen, absorbs a third of the bottom of the screen, and I'm just kind of okay, sure. Especially by the time we're with Fragile, or even in episode 4, as we'll get to later today, but I felt personally comfortable enough where I was okay, I didn't necessarily need to know anything unless I went in and looked it up. So the game does a decent job of kind of naturally, organically providing those tips whenever it is relevant to what Sam is doing in the open world. But I just felt like it's a large part of it, even when you weren't in the menus, when you were in the open world, there were a large part of times, especially going in and out, where I'm just kind of inundated with the UI, and I thought it was a lot, as opposed to being in the wild. So yeah.
And I know part of the conversation too is because we were so early in the game at the time of talking, but I think when there's not as many things going on, it does seem like a lot of, kind of fluff in the UI, or you're getting tons of tips and tricks about stuff happening a little bit too much. But like you said, Rick, as you get more things, like the weather forecast, for example, happens later on in the game. It's episode 3, end of episode 2, something like that. Things like that, as it continues to give you more objects and parts of the world to keep track of, that's when it's I appreciate the UI, or I appreciate the tips more, because I was I would have forgot about that. I would have forgot I can use my strand to tie down pieces of my gear so it doesn't fall off when I'm doing these sick jumps, doing 360 hops off of a crater. But yeah, it's things like that I'm okay, I appreciate it being there for later on, episode 4, 5, 6 and onward.
Totally. I never paid attention to those weather forecasts.
He said, "The heck this Timefall. I don't care."
Well, they're not particularly useful, right? Because like it'll start raining, and then you can either sit there at the timefall shelter and then like keep pressing the button to like wait it out, or alternatively you can look at it, but it's just whenever you pull it up and you have to press like R3 or L3, I can't remember which, to cycle through the map to see when that timefall is happening. It's not like it gives you an actual forecast for however long it's going to take. It just shows you a block of like blue over the screen, which I'm like, okay, this is good, but I prefer it when I'm just in the shelter and I just hit the button to have Sam keep on sleeping, and then he wakes up and saying, "Oh, it's still coming down out there."
Yeah, I didn't get much use out of it. Honestly, I just kind of that's been the theme of the game for me, is I've just been sort of roughing it and taking things as it comes.
Yeah.
Before we started, I wanted to talk a little bit more about the game as a whole, in terms of the writing and in terms of the ideas behind it. I was just reading some stuff since our last episode and thinking about it, and I thought it would be interesting to talk about. I did find a translated interview from Kojima. I don't remember. I think it's a Dutch website or a Swedish maybe, but I didn't have the time to read through all of it. I'm going to put it in the episode description. But Kojima, it turns out, when we talk about games, I think a lot of the time in games criticism on podcasts especially, we tend to talk about games as autonomous works existing sort of within and of themselves, maybe within the artist's oeuvre, but not really in terms of where they exist in the culture. And that's all well and good. I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with that, but it's a different style of criticism. And indeed, with Death Stranding, it turns out Kojima was directly inspired by Donald Trump and Brexit. There's a quote from Kojima where he said, via Games Radar, he said, "President Trump right now is building a wall. Then you have Brexit, where the UK is trying to leave. There are lots of walls and people thinking only about themselves in the world." And that sort of ties into his idea and the themes of this game of loneliness and connecting with other people. And I was thinking about that too in terms of the rope and the stick. That's sort of the allegory he opens the game with. But I don't know. I find that there's some inconsistency in this. For example, if we think about the stick, what does that mean? The stick fends away the evils. It fends away the other, right? It keeps us safe. It is a sort of tool. It's a weapon. Games have given us sticks, swords, staffs, weapons since they've existed. This game doesn't give you that tool on purpose until it does, until it says, okay, well, now you need it to fight these VTs and these mules. It wants you to focus on the rope, that is, to unite things, to bring things to you, to embrace in that togetherness, until it doesn't want you to bring everything in. Kojima wants other players' structures to assist other users on the network. You can pick up their deliveries, you can make use of their roads, but he intentionally didn't bring in the void outs that happen in games, in other players' games. If that happens in yours, it's not going to be in somebody else's game. And of course, there are pragmatic reasons to that, right? But it does add a sort of friction to what he's trying to do. And I've been thinking about that a lot, the inconsistencies and the overall thesis. And it seems to me, and I apologize for sort of dancing around this point as I'm trying to get it into my crosshairs, but it seems to me Kojima has feelings about a lot of this stuff. And he's not necessarily trying to make an academic argument and an in-depth exploration of what it means to be united, the intricacies of what it means to be lonely in the social media age. I mean, let's think about how likes in this game were explicitly put there so other players can feel connected to others. There's a whole conversation about whether or not that's deleterious or beneficial to a society in this new digital age, whether likes are replacing human connection. That's a whole conversation that's sidestepped here and implicitly sort of puts Kojima on the side of, no, it's good actually. I don't think that was his intention. And I think, he's not trying to do an exploration of these things at an academic level. That doesn't mean we can't talk about it. But I think if we're going to continue with the theme that I try to do on the show of steel manning arguments and steel manning games as far as we can within reason, I think Kojima just feels a lot of things about the culture. And whether or not he thinks about them as deeply as some of us, or maybe not as deeply as some of us, he's putting his feelings and ideas out there into the works that he's creating. And he's showing us the ideal that he wants. Not saying that he wants the Death Stranding to happen, obviously. Maybe he does. I don't know. But he wants a society where togetherness and helping others is important. Is it as in-depth of an exploration of it as you could get? Absolutely not. It's quite shallow in many ways. But he's showing us that that's what is important to him. And again, I think it's important to point out the frictions, the inconsistencies, where it doesn't go nearly as deep as I think would be interesting. But at the end of the day, this isn't an academic exploration from Kojima. It's just him putting his feelings into his work and saying, please enjoy it. This is what I've been feeling. Maybe it resonates with you. That's where I kind of feel like his work, or at least Death Stranding, is existing. I don't know. Am I onto something here, or am I just kind of unfocusedly rambling and wasting people's time?
It sounds like you're pretty much picking up effectively what it is. I mean, just kind of going off your points there too. At the end of the day, especially here with Pixel Project Radio, I mean, we know that video games are art. Not every video game is high art, but to some degree, all video games are art. And as we've talked about on this last episode, and if you're tapped into video games or the culture in general, you hear Hideo Kojima, you hear, artists, you hear masterpiece, you hear him at kind of the top of his game when it comes to making these video games. And maybe not necessarily, like you said, Rick, doing the most academic, research-esque version of them, but making some that are generally very fun to play and hold up very well over time, which is something that I would also staple onto Death Stranding 1 as it stands. But that's the big thing is from his career that I've seen so far and not knowing the man personally, I think he does do that. He takes things that he feels, that he's interested in, that he wants other people to talk about and dissect, and he puts it out there in a video game form, something that's digestible for most people. But as we've seen with this last, Death Stranding 2, and I feel like we talked about on the last episode, but I can't recall, he will go out of his way to change something if he feels like it's too edible, if he feels like it's too easily digested by people, because he wants, not necessarily just like us, I don't want to put us on a pedestal necessarily, but he wants people to break down his games, to have these really in-depth, dissective research topics and conversations and 3-hour-long podcasts and dissertations about his work, because maybe he's also trying to get down to the bottom of how he feels, why he feels that way, and ultimately what the answer may be, if there is an answer. And that's kind of what I'm picking up from there, and what I was listening to you talking about this here. I'm like, I think you're really not dancing around it. You're pretty much tap dancing on it. I think he's doing it for us to kind of dissect and break down, because he either wants to also know the answer, or he's just, as most great artists do, you feel a certain way, you put it out there, and then you let the academics decide what it means. But ultimately, once you put your art out there into the world, it means a little bit something different to everybody.
Well, first of all, I'm much too rotund to be tap dancing on anything, so let's just clear that up. I like what you said, though, and Nick, I apologize, I don't mean to step in front of you.
That's okay.
I do like what you said, though, that Kojima wants these discussions to happen, and I think that's important, too. I forget what episode we said this on, or where I said this even. I might have just said it in my personal life, but literature is a sort of social activity, and I think Kojima views games as that as well, and films, too. I mean, films in many respects are a social activity as well. I mean, from the most obvious representation being the movie theater, seeing it with other folks, to the discussions that come out of it, either in amateur groups, in film critics, whatever. It's a social activity, and that's how we progress our understanding and our appreciation and our tastes. I'm reading right now, well, it's a textbook on literary criticism and literary theory, because I want to be better at that kind of thing, and I want to bring that A game to this podcast. That's kind of the bare minimum that I see. Like, if I'm not doing that, what's the point of doing this? And Norman Holland, who is a literary theorist, said this about interpretation. He says, quote, "Interpretation is a function of identity. All of us, as we read, use the literary work to symbolize and finally to replicate ourselves," end quote. And that's that kind of what we were talking about in Greece, where interpretation is a sort of co-creation with the author. The end result, the criticisms that we bring, the interpretations that we bring, says as much about us as it does about the work itself. It's that kind of thing. And now that does potentially open us up to a sort of hyper solipsism where we say, well, it doesn't matter what the game says and what the author says. It's all about how we feel, man. And it's like, well, no, that's that can be problematic too. We're kind of stuck in that between that rock and that hard place of like that solipsism, then over reliance on the self and the hyper subjectivity. Like Terry Eagleton is another theorist that opine that like if it's not hyper subjective, if it's not up to us to decide it, then that means the meaning is, quote, buried in the work like a wisdom tooth waiting to be extracted. And I don't think that's quite right either. I mean, I think it's somewhere in the middle, as so many things in life are. But that's what makes this important, right? Is that it is a little bit of both. Kojima had an idea, Kojima's team had an idea, and they put it into the game, but every bit as important as that is us bringing ourselves to it, and we co-create that beautiful interpretation that we put out for tens of people to listen to on this show.
Yeah, no, I mean, so the idea of like hypersubjectivity, right? And William kind of brought up the nature of subjectivity on our Expedition 33 podcast and why, it's really important to kind of view that piece of literature or a piece of rather, that video game, that work of art, from an individualist perspective, because of how personal of a story it is. And I think that's, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Will, I'm not trying to take what you were taking, speaking out of context. I think the thing for me with Kojima is that, similar to what you were saying, Rick, I respect the heart of everything that he's going into this with. Obviously, his direct influences of like how, potentially, or most likely negative Trump's influence and effect on, the populist movements, not only in America, but on, governments around the world, combined with, all other types of like far right movements that kind of lean towards isolation, self-isolation, like isolationist, foreign policy. The idea that we're living in this hyper-connected age, but we're continuing to retreat into ourselves, there is a legitimate conversation to be had there. And I think that he attempts to have that conversation in Death Stranding. I think for me, where it fails is that he is trying to have too many conversations, and he has too many aesthetics that are competing or tones that are competing in his writing. He wants to be ironic. He wants to be campy, but then he also wants to be super serious. And I think some people would say it's a credit to the game that he's blending all three of these things in the presentation of Death Stranding when you're engaging with these, with the story of what's happening to Sam and Amelie and these other characters that we're meeting on the way. My interpretation is that he needs a better editor. If he wants to get across what he's getting at, he needs somebody to rein him in and tell him no way more often than he's been told in the past. And this is, again, and I don't know if I went as hard into this in the initial episode, but this is my problem with auteurism. It is the conflation of a creator's ability and will to create a piece of work and attribute it to their own single focused artistic vision. It's a great asset when you have the ability to work collaboratively on a team to distill that focused vision, but then it can also be a detriment to itself when you're in charge of so much of the planning and the writing for a large game like this.
That's interesting that you see some irony in here. This game seems to me to be extraordinarily earnest, almost to a fault at times, but I want to steelman Kojima a little bit, and I bet this is more what Will is feeling, if I had to guess, not to speak for him, because he's here, he can do that himself. But he does try to do a lot, and he maybe doesn't go as in-depth or extrapolate into some of the more interesting conversations, but I think it's because he's just kind of the mouthpiece of the common man. He's kind of just like all of us. He's not an academic. He admittedly does have a lot of refined taste because he, grew up just watching. I was reading a story about him and how his family would his parents would give him money to go to the theaters every day. And they were like, but you've got to come home and talk about the themes and the narrative of the movie with us. And first of all, amazing parenting, unironically, I think that's really awesome.
Yeah. Agreed.
But, he's obviously got a refined taste, but he's kind of the mouthpiece of the everyman, if you think about it. And I think there's something to be said about that. You think about, I was thinking about it today in terms of music, and speaking as somebody that has played this and been in the audience for this, you hear some musicians that are really playing for other musicians. and 2 other musicians, it is extraordinarily impressive and interesting and erudite, and you love it and you respect it. But to the average listener, it doesn't really do a whole lot. There's that balance, those scales are off kilter. Whereas Kojima here is kind of being the musician that everybody can appreciate. You know, he's maybe not being the most technical. He's not doing the most interesting reharmonizations, tritone substitutions, harmonic language. He's not playing, quote, out there, but he is playing in a way that I think everybody can resonate with. So, and again, I'm not even necessarily saying this is how I feel personally, but I'm trying to, bring the best out of him, is that yes, some of this stuff falls a little flat to us because we are expecting a little bit more, but in this situation, we're kind of like the musicians, whereas he's saying it with so much earnestness and heart, and at times campiness and at times, over the top cheesiness, that I think it's resonating with a lot of people that are there, and can relate to what he's saying. Does that make any kind of sense at all?
Yeah, I get that. I definitely get that. I think where I get hung up in is exactly what you were saying, Rick, is that I do expect a lot more from Kojima. This being my first Kojima game, obviously I'm picking up what people are putting down about how it's self-aware campiness. It's like it's purposeful or intentive. Like this is what he does all the time, and I get that. And so this is a thing where it's an established aesthetic, an established framework for a lot of people who are his fans. And these are the same folks who claim that Death Stranding is his best work yet, and the same folks who continue to say Death Stranding 2 is an even better representation of his best work yet. I think that just for me, it's been tough to kind of really sign on board because of what I personally look for. As a player, and as somebody who enjoys open worlds like this or works like this, I appreciate it for its individuality again. And to what you were saying earlier, Rick, is like I don't mean to come across as like overly negative or disparaging of Death Stranding by any means, because I think it's an incredibly unique and amazing game. I struggle to see sometimes where Kojima draws the line in between like wanting to be overtly like himself, wanting to really pack his own ideas into the experience, and like when he wants the user, when he wants the actual audience to engage with the work. I think that's where maybe some of his writing has a shortfall for me.
I don't want to speak over Will. Will, if you have anything to say.
No, you're good. I said as far as to you mentioned before, where you're like not stepping on my toes or not speaking for me. No, you were pretty much on board as far as what I was saying. That's why I was comfortable being like, let them fight. I was in my King Kong Godzilla moment.
You've already heard all of this from me before, Will. I've been in my Pepe Sylvia mode, like screaming at the wall, pointing at the lines, connecting the dots. Yeah,
look, I'm just happy that Rick is on board the Kojima train now. It's not just me defending Kojima going 2v1 like now.
well, I mean, look, I did come off as too negative in the last episode. Perhaps I'm now overcompensating. I do have problems with how this is told, but I think now I've just kind of accepted what Kojima is. And, this isn't, I think I was approaching it hoping to get a more literary academic style of observation and exploration of things like loneliness in the modern age. I was expecting a Disco Elysium, and that's never what Kojima said that he was,
Right.
So that was honestly on me. That doesn't mean we can't critique it, of course, but I am having a better time now. And of course, I mean, like I said, those first 3 episodes, they do kind of plod along a bit. It really picks up once you start getting to episode 4. It really goes. And to that end, why don't we get into the story and put some of this into context and talk about some of the cool stuff that happens? So, picking up on episode 2, we talked about the room last time. This is where we're introduced to the room. Yeah, I don't know. There's a funny moment where Sam is showering, and Hartman starts speaking to him, and he's like, "Don't we have any privacy here?" And he's like, "What does he say? Oh no, except for taking a shower and going to the toilet. That is." And that's pretty good. Got a laugh out of me.
Yeah, it's good. I like the room. I like the design of the room. I think this is probably one of the coolest little home base UI elements that I've seen in a really long time, and it's presented in a really unique way.
I even appreciate all the little touches around there. I think we had talked about it a little bit too, where I want to say it was you, Rick. I want to say, and you can correct me, of course, with like the pointing that Sam does sometimes.
Yeah, geez Louise.
Yep, I remember that one. He's just like, it's not really too bad, except for when he like points, behind him, and he's gesturing me to look, and it was like, you kind of pissed me off there, Sam. but I appreciate like the little touches around, and yeah, I like moving around the room. There is a couple of points there, especially when you're later in the game, where I'm just like, I'd like to kind of skip the whole like transition sections and just like, all right, I gotta go drink. I gotta drink 3 Bridges energy drinks and get the hell out of here. So let me skip through this faster. But there's a couple things like that.
Only 3? Only 3. Listen, don't disparage the Friday Night Caffeine Boys name, Will. You're drinking all of those caffeine drinks.
But 3 is to get the max boost. After that, you're just doing it for the love of the game.
Exactly.
Just like in real life.
Yep.
Shortly after here, Hartman, if you'll remember last time, Sam cremated his mother, Elizabeth, right?
Bridget
Strand.
Yeah.
Elizabeth, who's that? I was watching Mad Men. I was Googling Elizabeth Moss. That's how I got there. Amazing show. But yes, he cremated Bridget, the death of the mother. We talked about that. I didn't go into it as much as I should have. That's on me, whatever. Hartman introduces the new face in Hope of America. It's Amelie, the woman in red from your dreams. This is Sam's sister, or at least that's how it's set up. This is a tense reunion. It's very terse. We get the feeling that maybe there's some difficulties in the family there, and it's implied by Amelie that Sam had left them. She says at one point, we never forgot about you, Sam. You ran away. You cut us off. And this is the first time they've seen each other in the last 10 years. It's also our first, I think, explicit reference to the beach where Amelie says,
Been 10 years since you saw each other, right? And in all that time, she hasn't aged a day.
He knows why. My body's still on the beach. I don't get to grow older.
Which at that time, what the hell does that mean? I don't think we know.
Yeah, no, I don't think they've gotten to it too far yet. So yeah, you're just like on the beach. I'm just like, okay, this is some more Kojima wackiness. Like I'm always like, he'll explain it eventually. That's like my throwaway line for the first probably 10 hours of this game. It's like, oh, he'll explain it later.
What happened with Amelie, Hartman explains here with a little interactive map thing. Amelie put together an expedition of Bridges members and went west. How many years ago? Was it 10 years ago? 6 years ago? 10 years ago?
I want to say it was around 6 years ago, because I know they hadn't met up for a while, like you said, that 10 years, and then between then is when they actually did the expedition out there with the first Bridges group.
They're going west looking for survivors in the post-apocalyptic landscape, connecting everybody and convincing folks to join the UCA, which stands for
the United Cities of America.
Thank you. Yes, I did not write that down, and I couldn't.
I thought it was a quiz. I was like, yes, I'm going to pass this one.
I need you to play the Bridget Strand theme music cutscene whenever you recycle something right there.
Please.
They reached Edge Knot City, which is, you could think of that as being like near California. It's all the way on the west coast. Amelie got kidnapped and her team was wiped out. She is being kept as like a political prisoner of sorts by a group called the Homo Demons.
I love it.
We're abandoning all subtlety. Homo Demons, of course, that Latin, that's like mad men. Mad, not as in the amazing show that I'm watching, but mad as in like deranged, out of one's mind, insane. Unwell mentally, Yeah. And of course it's a pun because they call them demons, because these are terrorists whose sole motivation is to just blow shit up and cause fucking havoc. It's that comic book villain, kind of like, I just want to blow shit up because I'm evil, and they twist their mustache,
Seriously, yeah, like their whole thing is causing void outs, which is introducing, humans to a BT to, effectively have a nuke go off. So I'm like, can you imagine, just real life, somebody just being like, yeah, we're just going to set off nukes in random cities. Why? Because.
Which is what happened to us earlier. That is, it's more or less confirmed here because of how these Homo Demons look. And Sam kind of puts it together too, that one of them caused the void out that took out the city earlier that we got caught in.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. We come here, like, obviously the representation of the Homo Demons, like it is Real interesting, and we're gonna touch on a character coming up here. I won't no future spoilers while we're going through this segment of the show, but yeah, I mean it is an interesting way to kind of instill or establish the antagonists of this game or like the actual bad guys of this game. It's I mean, I find their character design really cool. I'll say that as much. You know,
they do
in terms
look very
of like,
sweet.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the strong points that they have here with those character designs. It's awesome.
Although I will point this out later, but I laughed out loud when one of them takes off a face mask and there's another face mask underneath of it. That was so absurd.
That's a classic. That's a classic right there.
This is also setting up this through line here that, you know, is related to Kojima's comments on Trump and Brexit, that there are plenty of folks that do not care for the UCA, do not want to be united. They want to go through alone. You know, it's this hyper-individualism that, Nick, I think you mentioned a little earlier, that is kind of synonymous with current day capitalism, right? The prevailing wisdom that, you know, you are what you make of yourself. It's all up to you. Pull yourself up by the bootstraps, whatever you'd like. You know, your success is entirely your own. And that leads to this irrational individualism. And that's what Kojima's sort of rallying against here. And, you know, to his credit, even though it's ham-fisted sometimes, I do agree. I think that has been largely deleterious on society. But anywho's, Sam's job now is tasked to go west. He doesn't really want to at first. He's one of those folks. He's like, you know, this isn't worth it. You know, this is just going to cause more problems. Sam kind of takes the approach, at least it seems here, if you can't fix it all, why do anything? You know, like it's just going to cause more problems. And, you know, we learn eventually that Sam thinks that getting rid of the BTs is kind of the first step, but he agrees. He reluctantly agrees. That's another thing that I noticed, not to do another tangent. I'm now like I'm up through like chapter 9 at the time of recording. Sam's kind of a nothing character. There's not much to this guy.
And it's definitely one of those, I feel like Kojima set it up purposely, especially at the beginning. And of course, as the story progresses, you find out more. But the best thing you know about him, or most, I should say, you know about him, is that he's an iconic porter. You know, everyone knows him by name, the Sam, the man who delivers. He has ties to the president there. But outside of that, like you said, he's not super emotive. He doesn't have too many crazy, strong feelings about things outside of not wanting to really get involved with the UCA. He's very much of a loner. But that puts him in that same kind of grouping as, you know, like the Clint Eastwoods, you know, man with no name. You know, he's, hey, this guy has a reputation and he doesn't talk a lot. And what are we going to learn from there? So that's kind of on brand with what I would think Kojima would set up. I feel like Solid Snake is very similar, especially when you first get introduced to him.
Okay.
You just know he's a legendary war fighter and, you know, talk softly, carry a big stick. And then, of course, you learn more as the 2,500 games that he's in slowly comes out.
2,500.
Let's say
Solid Snake.
Not including his Smash Bros visits, of course.
Psycho Mantis. Yeah, you're right. So that's kind of our job now. We're going to head west, connecting waypoints along the way. There are a lot of little micro stories that happen throughout here that we're not going to touch on, like all of them. Some of them are sweet, some of them are superfluous, but I will say I had a really great time doing these deliveries and connections. I think it's fun. I think the game is fun. We should say, too, Sam is still seeing the visions anytime he connects to his BB. He's still seeing that man, that Mads Mikkelsen man. We're going to find out more about him soon. Sam is still seeing dreams with Amelie as well. I'm not going to point this out every time because there are quite a few instances of this, but last episode I had mentioned that Kojima and his team really want you to see how clever they are. You know, they're really self-conscious that you might miss some of what they're laying down, which, like, I think those of us that, you know, like we were saying a few minutes ago, that look for this stuff, it's a little obvious to us, but maybe to the average player, not so much. But they will lay it out very, very plainly a lot, and the dialogue is kind of clumsy. For example, there's a dream with Amelie, and she kind of lays out the symbolism behind the word strand. She says,
It's a funny word, strand. A strand is part of rope or bond, while stranding means being washed up on the shore. And being stranded is when you can't go home. I'm stranded now, Sam. Here on the shore of the Pacific.
it's, you know, It's a little clumsy. It's a little obvious, but, you know, it's for somebody. Somebody heard that and they kind of had a light bulb moment, you know?
She's stranded on a strand waiting for someone to hand her a strand. It's like buffalo, 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 buffalo.
I love that sentence. Also, and I still to this day do not know what this means, Amelie's clothes change briefly in this flashback. She goes from her red dress to a sort of blue pantsuit sort of thing.
Yeah.
What is
it's
that?
Kind of explained later. It's not explicit. Well, it's explained to a degree. It's one of those things where, because you said like you're almost done, but not quite. Once you fully wrap the game and you kind of understand what the deal is, going back and either playing it or just watching some clips, things will kind of click together more. Be like, oh, okay, I get it now.
Okay, fair enough. I trust you.
Something that I did want to ask you, Rick, in terms of your own interpretation. Obviously, red has a lot of symbolism. Amelie is most seen in the red dress. Does that mean anything to you, at least at this point in the game?
You know, to be perfectly honest, I mean, she's stepping into the role of a politician. Politicians like to wear red because it conveys confidence and power. That's honestly as far as I read into it. We don't really know all too much about Amelie. And in fact, at this point in time, I'm not even convinced that who we're speaking to at night is Amelie, based off of one particular scene where she just ignores him, basically.
Yeah.
I don't really know, to be honest with you. I just assumed that it was like a politician thing.
Gotcha.
But not far off.
I'm right there with you.
Yeah, there are a lot of scenes like that where Amelie will say something that's sort of circling the themes and the ideas pretty clearly. You're going west. Deadman will tell you more about your BB. This is where they set up that Deadman speaks about the BBs like they're equipment, and Sam looks at it like it's a little baby. This is really, really explicit. They set this up really early, and if you're genre savvy even a little, you know where this is going, right? Sam is getting attached to a baby. Deadman says, no, it's equipment. It just looks like a baby. It's just disposable. You know, it's classic sci-fi.
And I feel like this is also one of those things too where, and it's not a spoiler, but it's more of, you got to understand that the UCA, just because you're working with them, you know, aren't necessarily the good guys. It's not like this is good guys versus bad guys, although on the other side of the fence, bad guys are, you know, committing void outs and nuclear attacks and things like that. But that doesn't necessarily mean the UCA is the goody two shoes people. You know, they have these quite literally babies, and they're like, okay, they have their equipment because they're born out of still mothers and all this, and they're effectively using these kids as weapons / shields, depending on the situation.
Well, and it's also like kind of a comparison to the American military, or just militaries in general. Like they learned about the usage of the BBs from the Homo daemons. Like they were the ones to establish that technology. And it's a scientist later on, if I'm not mistaken, please correct me if I'm wrong, but it's a scientist that was working for the UCA that was like, oh, this is a good idea. We need to do this.
Yes, that does happen later.
I hope that's not a spoiler. That's, feel free to cut that.
No, it's fine. It's not the biggest spoiler, I think. And like you were both just saying, that is pretty synonymous to I mean, at least from our perspective. Again, we're bringing ourselves to this interpretation, like to the American military-industrial complex and how they kind of, you know, scoop up the youngins with promises of grandeur. I don't know. That's not what this is about. Let's keep going before we get into trouble. Yeah, I'm pulling at my shirt collar here. Speaking of bad guys, Will, you were just mentioning the bad guys. We run into one of them here pretty soon, and it's shortly before our first boss fight. You exit after a delivery, just an innocuous delivery. You exit, timefall is falling, the entire ground turns into a sea of inky black. It's BT time. They're being controlled by a man. It's the same man from the beginning who descended like a demigod from heaven and caused the first void out. He introduces himself.
The name's Higgs, the particle of God that permeates all existence.
In my notes, I wrote, I am reminded of a quote from AV writer Will Hughes on Death Stranding 2, where he says that Kojima is in a war with subtlety.
I love that. I love that so much.
What I do love, like unironically, Higgs addresses Fragile here. Fragile's in the background. They have some kind of history, which we're going to learn about soon. Sam sort of smells our memories. Not Sam. Higgs sort of smells our memories. He figures out that Bridget's dead and that Amelie's filling in. Amelie's his next target, and he refers to her as the extinction entity. He says, that girl's an extinction entity. We don't know what that means at this time. I do like that because that's immediately planting something that we learn a long, long time from now.
Yeah.
It's funny too, because it's just crazy enough to think like, oh, sorry not to cut you off there, but it's just when you say something like that, especially because the way Higgs has already been talking, he's so over the top. You know, he's your showman character of the game so far. He talks really interesting and he has this crazy stuff to say. Excellent job there by Troy Baker. But yeah, him saying someone's an extinction entity, you kind of just write that off as like, oh, he's just being extra. You know, he's just going out of his way to use words because they sound cool to him. But like you said, you know, it kind of plants a seed that pays off a little bit later on, that blooms as the game progresses.
I mean, I got to say, Will, you talk about great performance by Troy Baker. I want to love this character. I want to like him. I want to like him. I know to the listeners I'm coming across as being hypercritical and just overly negative on this, but I just really didn't like this interpretation. I didn't like this interpretation. This feels like whenever Jared Leto played Morbius, and it's just like there is no sense of subtlety. You know, you take off the mask and there's a mask underneath, and then he's walking around. He's like it's like he's a theater character twirling his mustache, like you said earlier, Rick. And I just, oh man, it's not my cup of tea, I guess. I won't continue to go into that.
And you wonder how much too is a Troy Baker decision and a voice director decision, right? I mean, the voice director could have very well said like, well, this isn't how Kojima and his writers wrote this character. You know, you've got to be a little over the top. You've got to play to the people in the back of the auditorium. Otherwise they won't get it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. It's just, he's so good at, I think in a lot of the other roles that Troy has done, he's so good at interpreting like imparting his own interpretations of characters and bringing that sense of subtlety. You know, I mean, like his most famous role, obviously, is known for that. That's what he's known for. And it's so lacking here that like, if we didn't know that this was Troy Baker, I am 100% convinced that this could have been any other voice actor. Like, I don't think he necessarily brought anything special to the character of Higgs, which is, you know, it is what it is.
Oof, ouch.
Of course, by his most famous role, you mean Kanji from Persona 4.
Correct. That one.
Goodness gracious, just imagine the things that might happen to me there. Woo!
Who does have some subtlety to him, you might not expect. But no, I'm very excited. We're a little sneak preview. We are doing The Last of Us Part 2 later in October, and I'm very, very much looking forward to that because Troy Baker's in it
for a treat.
For a little bit. Oh, I've already played it. I know. Spoiler alert. I love that
We're
game.
in for a treat.
Okay, awesome.
When those episodes come out, that's going to be awesome. I'm looking forward to that one.
So let's talk about this boss fight. Higgs summons a giant, like, Kraken BT. The ground is turned into, like, an inky tar black sea. The Kraken BT is coming up. We have to jump onto these floating buildings and debris and fight it back with hermeneutic grenades.
Hermetic, yeah, definitely. That's
yes.
Those are. I honestly, and Will, I'm curious to see your take on this overall, but I think that these BT fights specifically are one of the most visually impressive, stunning moments of this entire game. Like just the idea of it, combined like the theme of fighting these entities that are beyond the veil of like what our reality is. Like, you know, are we interacting with spirits that are gone dead? Like we don't really know at this point, like who or what are we interfacing with, but it's that bubbling black tar that comes out of the ground that is, you know, essential to, you know, something that's going to happen later on in the game that we're going to figure out. But whether or not it happens in this boss fight or in boss fights later, I would say that like visually it's really stunning. I think some people have issues with it from a like a game's mechanic standpoint. Like they might feel like it could be a little bit clunky. For me, it works. I think specifically because at this point in the game, we only have our hermetic grenades and we can toss it. And it's about that movement, that action of navigating the battlefield, the buildings that come up out of the tar that we need to scale and climb onto in order to, make ourselves less vulnerable to the BT that's on the ground. I think it's really good. And again, just huge shout out to the character designers here, because these enemies are just insanely cool.
Yeah, just underscoring on that. That's the best part about these bigger fights to me. And effectively, these can happen too anytime you get grabbed by the ghoulies, as far as the BTs like later on in the game, and they give you something equivalent. Sometimes it's a big lion. Sometimes, it's a kraken. I feel like there's at least one or two other ones too. And there's a few later on that are story specific. But I think the whole part of jumping around out of the tar and the platforming aspect and kind of how to get from A to B to C without getting slapped around by the BT is actually really cool. The fighting itself, not a big fan of really most, if not all, the boss fights in the game. But that's generally not why I'm here for Death Stranding in the first place. It's more of just a reason to get past it, to continue the story and continue the kind of trekking back and forth. But especially at this point, you only really have the grenades. So you're just like, time to go find some more.
It should be said too, if you run out, and Will, you might have to correct me if I'm wrong here, these like manifestations of other players kind of rise up out of the tar black sea and throw more ammo to you.
Yep, that is correct. So that's another cool thing about it as well. Like as you continue, that happens more often as you're doing those boss fights. If you interact with player characters and connect yourself to players that are playing Death Stranding around the same time as you.
Do you know whether or not it's affected by the likes that you'll get on structures like the community engagement you have?
I feel like it's more of the ones that you give, but I think the ones that you get also affected as well. But yeah, like you could potentially recognize names that like, oh yeah, I like that guy's bridge 2 hours ago, and now he's throwing me, a gun that shoots blood. So
yeah,
it's another instance of Kojima like bringing in the good from connecting online and not the bad. It's fine. If anything, it's just convenient because if you did run out and you didn't have any more, well, you're now soft locked basically.
Correct.
So, I mean, he would have had to have had a workaround for this somehow. This boss is pretty easy, not difficult whatsoever, which is funny because Sam is the first person in history to kill a BT. Before we move on to the next episode, Fragile, and the pacing will pick up after this, I promise. There is a line, this is just a throwaway line of Hardman, talking about sort of the history, and it's about mules and AI. This is so interesting reading this in a 2025 lens. Here's what Hardman says, if I can get it isolated, the audio, I'll put it in, otherwise I'll just read it. He goes, damn addicts chasing a cargo high. Back in the day, AI did everything. Deliveries were handled by unmanned vehicles and drones. It was revolutionary, damn near a singularity. No reason for it not to take off. But it didn't. People didn't like it when we took the human element out of the service industry. So, after some consideration, we put it back in, made jobs no one really needed and gave them to folks who couldn't live without them. And from there it snowballed. Now we've got cults of cargo-chasing crazies who get off on hijacking shipments. Jackals, always on the lookout for the next porter.
Yeah.
I am very curious how Kojima and his team feel about this specifically, this lore setup now in 2025, when AI and, the more rabid fan base, those like fascistic adjacent drooling lackeys that champion this kind of thing are, one, out to kind of change our lives for the worse, but two, specifically making Kojima and his industry much more at risk. I'm really curious to know what they thought of it, because there's no way in 2016 or 2015 when this was being written, 2015, 16, 17, I mean, again, Kojima is not tapped into a secret society any more than the rest of us are. He didn't know this was coming. And I'm so curious to hear how he feels about this, or if this is in Death Stranding too.
I imagine it's got to be. I gotta imagine, because even they explore this actually pretty blatantly as you go later on in the game, and you unlock, the autonomous drones that start with delivery, and I think that's probably what set up that level of lore that's like integrated in there, which is really interesting, and it kind of like helps you as the player develop or something like that. I agree with you. I think it is fascinating. Again, the great Kojima predictor. Who would have thought somebody would have a conversation about AI in 2020, right?
In more like 2010, 20, like before that. I'm trying to think when Metal Gear Solid like 2 came out, that's like Metal Gear Solid 2 and 3, they really got crazy into AI. So
Oh, really?
the fact that we're getting into this now too, and it's just it's the classic Kojima's a prophet. He's a prophet. He's here from the future to tell us about what's going to happen.
Well, I think that's a bit dramatic. I mean,
very much.
I know some folks get into histrionics about it, but like, I mean, people have been talking about AI for a long time, and that was before the nefarious side of it, the nefarious side of the capitalists who wield it, reared their heads in real life, right? I mean, as a conceptual idea, it's very neat, it's very futuristic, and of course, depiction is not endorsement. That is a ridiculous take. Just because Kojima put this in the game does not mean he himself believes this. But the way Hardman speaks about it, I mean, listen to what the language he uses. He dehumanizes. First of all, I mean, he dehumanizes them as addicts, which is abhorrent. But he calls them animals, jackals, that are chasing the next porter. The way Hardman sets it up is that AI should have been a net good for humanity, and just because these people needed jobs, we have to give it back to them. I don't know if that's even part of the story at the end. It's just such an interesting thing to see in a game in 2025 when we're kind of living it in a sort of hell world way.
Yeah. Just to round it way back to episode 1 too. Rick, I was telling you that, this is something that would pop up later on that I felt like you were kind of tapped into or a part of. But we had mentioned how initially you were kind of slower on the game because you were like, I just keep stopping and picking up these packages and taking them back, and I can't like play through the story. And I was like, damn, they turned Rick into a mule. That's crazy. He's addicted to delivering the packages. He's not going to finish the story.
Yeah, to their credit, one thing about the mules that is cool is the AI for them is really good, I think. And of course, that's, the irony is not lost on us there. AI here means something different than the colloquial use that we talk about in real life 2025. The programming that they made into the enemies, the AI in that respect, is very cool because they are relentless. They will not let you go. They will track you forever looking for you.
Yeah, you really got to come ready to fight. Like if you show up to a mule camp or stumble across one by accident without a bola or some way to protect yourself that's not just the strand that you carry, generally going to have a bad time if you don't just take off. So I will agree there. You don't want to put yourself in a fight with a group of mules just by yourself.
So we're going into episode 3. This is the chapter for Fragile. We've got to go across the ocean, heading west over the lake to Lake Knot City. Fragile owns Fragile and the Fragile Delivery Express company, outfit, whatever. They own a boat. That's where we're going. Fragile's going to team up with us, mainly because she wants to get back at Higgs. It's unclear why she couldn't just do that on her own, but I mean, hey, the more the merrier, right? That's the theme of the game, right? Fragile tells us that in the room at one point, right? She's like, I'm not alone. I have you. Okay, there we go. But, we're doing that. She's still trying to be friendly towards Sam, constantly offering him a cryptobiote to eat. He never takes it. But we're teaming up for now. We're going west with Leah Seydoux.
I will say, just as a quick note, I think that, Leah Seydoux, I think that the relationship between Fragile and Sam are probably the best performed and the best acted, and I think arguably like the most interesting of this core cast here, in my opinion. And I really think that's in episode number 3 when you start learning about her and like what happened to her. I think it's one of the selling points for me.
I agree. That scene is very cool. We're gonna get to that in like just a couple of seconds here. Fragile, she gives us a strand or like an ID badge that's like woven with her blood because, Death Stranding. And that's going to convince some of the more paranoid preppers that are against the UCA. They'll see that she's with us. They'll say, okay, well, we're cool with her. I guess we'll join you. But the interesting thing is a lot of folks call her a terrorist.
Yeah.
Because you start piecing it together, you hear that a city got blown up by a nuke and everybody blames Fragile. We learn about that kind of in pieces throughout here. But actually, I mean, it comes up here. So, I mean, we might as well just talk about the whole thing now, right?
Yeah, I had no problem hopping into it.
Oh, one thing before we do, I found Conan before.
Hey, good. There you go.
The boy.
Yeah, he is hilarious in here.
Hey, Sam. Sam Bridges. Welcome to our summer home by the falls. I know what you're thinking. Is that an otter on my head? Or am I just happy to see you? Well, both.
I don't know what his otter hood does, though. I mean, it made it sound like I could go in water quicker, but that, I don't know, it didn't seem to work.
It makes it if you're standing in water or you're having to traverse through water and you're wearing it, that you won't slip and fall as easy.
Wear it and you too can ride the river rapids without fear. Unless you're afraid of looking too sexy. Right?
Okay, he said that I could like swim like an otter, and I was like, my guy, I cannot.
Nah, not that much.
Really? Still nothing? You know what? Fine. Just go, okay? Yeah, and make the river your friend. That'll be fun.
I got all these packages on my back. What do you mean swim?
Yeah, let's talk about Fragile and her past. So a while back, Higgs and Fragile were working together. They were partners of sorts, making deliveries, keeping things going. Higgs and his guys, for some reason, sort of hijacked their security system, began giving Fragile and her people things like bombs and guns to deliver instead of the life-saving medicine. And they were doing this without their knowledge. That's how Fragile carried a nuke into Middle Knot City. When she's explaining this, she has a line, everybody's telling you, Sam, that she's a terrorist, blah, blah, blah. So she tells you the truth, and she says,
So there you have it. Everything's true. Except for all the lies.
Which I know what they were going for, but my God, is that a clumsy sentence.
Does it just feel like one of those great like 80s or 90s, like almost like an Arnold Schwarzenegger type of line that you would hear in one of those movies? Yep.
That's such a campy action line, yeah. It's so funny. And she tells this story in two parts. So like that's where the first part ends. Then you go and do more deliveries. I find Conan. Deadman gets locked out of the BB records, and we're like, I wonder why. And then somebody gives you, Sam, a special delivery for Fragile. He says, well, it just so happened to not get scanned into the system. I guess they got it mixed up because it's too fragile and they didn't know if it was from Fragile or from us. Whoopsie doodle. You're going to have to take it to her yourself. And it's so clear that this is like a setup whenever it's happening. But
that's what I was going to ask you both. Like, did you both not immediately clock that was Troy Baker that walks up to you with the package?
The sketchiest guy not showing his face, head like down with the hat on. I'm like, what in the MCU is this? Like, Steve Rogers, if you don't get your ass over here.
I know people who use subtlety, and they're all cowards.
There you go.
I didn't necessarily clock that it was him. I just knew that it was a setup. Like, it's so obvious. Yeah. This thing just happens to escape Bridges' system where that has never happened before. And you're giving it to me specifically to give to Fragile. Really? Come on, man. And Sam just doesn't question it. He's like, okay.
Yeah, it's fine. I'm the man who delivers.
You kind of have a nightmare about it. You dream about it and you realize, oh shit, that was actually Higgs. Fragile comes into your room at night because, why not? And you open it. It's a nuke. He's done it again. He's doing this to me again. So you chuck it into a crater, like a lake nearby. That's the only way to get rid of it. And this is where Fragile gives you the rest of the story. And admittedly, this whole flashback is pretty cool. So what happens? Fragile got the nuke in her possession, like we mentioned before. She was going to take it to safety, but Higgs and his men, his goons, caught her before she could get it to safety. He strips her down to her underwear, summons Timefall. Previously, Fragile had mentioned that he's level 7 Dooms, which presumably gives him these abilities, just by the way. And he gives her an ultimatum. She can either jump or carry the nuke, stripped, through the Timefall to the bottomless pit and chuck it in. Now, when he says you can either jump or go through the Timefall, when he says jump, does he mean like you can jump and kill yourself, or like jump, just get out of here and let me detonate this city? Like, what does he mean by that?
He's meaning jump like the teleporting that she can do. So he's like, yeah, you can just get out of here.
Oh, so like teleport out and let me blow up this city?
Yep.
Something that I definitely wanted to ask you both. I wanted to ask about like the dooms aspect of this. This is something that Will and I were talking about, and something that Will like mentioned to me like much later on in the game, and I think and I wonder if it's more of a I didn't bother to read the emails because I found the emails dreadfully uninteresting as I was going through this game, and I know that's just a me thing, and that's okay. But you know, Will was talking about like the comparison between Fragile and Higgs and how they're both high dooms level users. And Fragile here, you know, as you indicate in your notes, you know, is a level 7, or she indicates that Higgs is a level 7 dooms user, and that's why he has the abilities to control BTs and create the timefall, all of these things that are happening at once. And I'm just curious, did either of you pick up on the fact that both of them are high level dooms users like naturally, or was that something that you kind of had to like look up, or did you discover that through the notes? Also
Fragile is a high level dooms user?
That's what I understand, or at least higher level than Sam, because this was a question that I was having as we were going forward, is that like, why does Sam not have any of these abilities other than the fact of that like he's a repatriate and whatever that means to us as the audience at this point in the game? Like I'm just curious as to like if it was apparent to you both that, you know, Fragile and Higgs were both special human beings that had these special powers referred to as the Dooms.
Yeah, it's not apparent like as this moment of the game that we're talking about here, but by the time you finish it and probably have to honestly do some of your own research afterwards, just because of how the game is, you figure out why certain people are high level dooms, specifically Higgs. There's a reason why Higgs is high level dooms, and it is not natural. I want to say that Fragile's semi-natural. She could have some changes as well that kind of made her, but yeah, she's higher level dooms. There, Rick as well, just because of the teleportation and her also being able to, I don't know if she can see them. I think she can just sense BTs, kind of like how Sam can. But that puts her, you know, a couple of clicks higher than Sam as far as his overall dooms level, or her overall dooms level.
Yeah, I figured she was higher than Sam since she could do the jumping.
Yep.
No, I kind of figured that there was a reason Higgs was, you know, so powerful. They just, at this point in time where I'm at, they haven't explained it yet. And, okay. You know, I want to go back to the emails thing. Nick, I've kind of done a 180 on this. I kind of like when games do this. There are some other games like Final Fantasy 13 very famously does this. Xenosaga does this.
Yeah.
I kind of like it. I've grown to like it. Well,
Will and I also reviewed Prey. We talked about how like, and I don't know if you were opposite from me on this, Will. I can't remember in terms of our conversation, but I loved in that game how diegetically interesting it was to, you know, discover any computer interface that lets you log in and read the emails of what was happening to the staff at when. And I think it's just because like maybe that's just more niche, like centric towards the genre that I like, the space sci-fi stuff, and you know what goes wrong when you encounter aliens or any crazy stuff that happens out there. So it definitely has to do with like writing, like real in the time moment writing. It's the same reason why I love reading Resident Evil notes, and it's classic because it's so silly. Every time you pick it up, it's like, oh, we caged a monster and electrocuted it for 11 days. Hope it doesn't get out. The next note you pick up, it got out.
Have you seen that meme online where it's like a fake Resident Evil note, and it's like, we've attached AK-47s to the arms of a gorilla, and we've replaced its arms with AK-47s. We hope nothing bad happens. And the next note, he escaped.
Yep, he escaped.
Yeah, it's great. It's the classic every time. But yeah, I did try to read some of these emails, and I was just like, oh, okay, I think I'm gonna vibe out. I think I'm just gonna listen to whatever these NPCs say to me whenever I finish my deliveries.
Well, it's less the emails, it's more the interviews where you get like transcripts of them talking and giving the lore. The emails are just like the fucking people that are like saying like, hey, thanks so much for delivering me that thing. Wow, you sure are special. 1 million thumbs up emojis. Hey, have you ever wondered? Have you ever wondered about what happens when we die? A thinking emoji. Gosh, isn't that just so interesting? A water emoji.
I love the little water emojis. I'm like, 'cause especially too thinking about it from the modern day interpretation.
Does he know? Does Kojima know?
Like, why is he doing like? I just love it. But
he's got to know what that means to us. He has to. I refuse to believe that he doesn't know. Somebody
but
hasn't
talking
told
what you're
him.
saying there specifically with the emails, Nick, I agree. The Prey emails are better because a lot of them, if not the vast majority, are really world building, and they're written out like world building emails. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. I know they're good. I'm not gonna say they're not good emails, but a lot of them aren't written like someone would really send an email outside of the occasional ones of somebody being snippy with each other.
Yeah.
But the reason why I like the emails in this game, the interviews are better, of course, like Rick was saying, but I also like the emails just because of what we just said there. It's some guy replying back to you, "Oh, thanks for delivering that pizza. I'm so excited to have my sister try some. It's too bad that she wasn't here to get it. Oh man, I had to eat it all by myself. Maybe next time." Thumbs up, smiley face. And I'm like, this is a real life person sending the world's goofiest email to me. And I'm just like, oh, that's cute. Thank you.
So back to Fragile and Higgs. So he gives her the ultimatum, you know, she's stripped down to her underwear, guns pointed at her. You can either jump, get out of here, we can blow up this town, or you can grab the nuke, run through the time fall, and dispose of it. Horrible, difficult choice. But Higgs does something that is just deliciously sadistic here. He places a hood over her head in order to preserve her pretty little face, quote. He also says, "See, I don't much care for my own face, but yours, I bet Daddy was real proud." And then he licks her face and he says, "I want your face to be a kind of testament." Totally degrading. So this is like, I like this kind of villain. Twisted to the point of total moral depravity, forcing, and let's not forget, Timefall is going to rapidly age her body, and he's keeping her face young to sort of show not just to her, but to the world, like these are the scars that she bears. Really, really cool. And he says at the end, no matter what you do, you'll still always be known as the terrorist lunatic that blew up Middle Knot City, even if you save South Knot. That's already on your record. Nothing you can do will change that. I love when a villain has you, forgive the language, by the balls. Mm-hmm. I love it.
Yeah, she really didn't have much of a choice. I mean, outside of, like you said, just really doubling down on being a terrorist. But we've already seen from this point in the game that Fragile is definitely one of the better characters. She has a good moral compass, and while she initially got into bed with Higgs before everything kind of went crazy and he became a complete psychopath, she still really held on to her morals, which led us to this point here where she has to make that decision, which we all know the decision she made, because I think they even showed a little bit earlier with like the little bit of an aged skin. So
yeah, I think that this definitely is one of the most one of the more evocative moments at this point in the game. It definitely, like what you were saying about the level of depravity and stuff with a villain like this, I definitely made me feel uncomfortable. So it succeeded on that front. But yeah, I think it's interesting to see where they go from here.
And she does it, to be clear. She opts to put the hood on and run through the timefall to dispose of this nuke. She is, by all accounts, a hero. And Sam tells her as much. Like, back in real life, he says, like, you're not a terrorist, you're a goddamn hero. And it's true. She, in many ways, gave what is almost the ultimate sacrifice. Unfortunately, they ruin, in my opinion, and I'm sure this is amazing for some people, they ruin it with some real campy dialogue here. Higgs, like as she's about to go, Higgs will say, like, they can slap a sticker on you, but you'll still break in transit, like as a play on Fragile. And then almost in response to that, immediately afterwards, this is where, you know, she starts saying things like, I don't break that easy. And this is like the first time of many she says, I'm fragile, but I'm not that fragile. And I hate it. I hate it so much.
It's such a fun line, though. It's such a fun line.
No, stop. Don't do this to me, Will.
I think the accent really sells it for me too. I just love Lea Seydoux' accent. So I'm not gonna pretend to do it, but yeah, it's just I love it. I love that line so much. That one and then the line at the very end of the game that Nick also hates. Those are like my two favorite lines in the game.
It's just like, I feel like the writing, and again, it could be Kojima, it could be his team, it could be both. I just, they constantly grab you by the shirt collars and they're like, do you get it? Do you get it? Do you get it? And it's like, yes, dude, I get it. You're doing a cool thing. Just let me go. Let me enjoy this.
Here's my question, Rick. And I mean, I'm not trying to be an apologist, but like, do you think that there's a chance that the localizer just isn't good? Do you think there's a chance in hell
No.
that that's a reality? Okay, all right.
I really doubt it
meant
because
to do that.
Kojima has like all the money in the world. And also, I mean, something that I learned, like this is me kind of egg on my face. I didn't know that Kojima spoke English because he very rarely does. But he does. Like, he's fluent in English. I read somewhere, it's actually really sad. I read somewhere that he got made fun of a few times for speaking English, and now he just like chooses not to.
Oh, that's sad.
Yeah,
That's
that is
horrible.
really sad. That is really sad. But I think he also surrounds himself with excellent translators too. So, and I would assume because of all the celebrities that he hangs out with, maybe he does choose to speak to them in a more private setting potentially. But yeah, he'll never. I doubt he'll ever speak English on stage.
Yeah, I looked up a few videos. Like, he's definitely done it, and his accent's not even that bad. Like, if people were making fun of him, they must have just been cruel.
Been assholes, yeah.
Yeah, that's horrible. But no, like, I mean, especially in 2025, like, localization has come so far from, like, Ted Woolsey. God bless him, but, things like that. Inserting Beavis and Butthead into Final Fantasy VI. Like, these days, Kojima and Sony are going to have, like, the best translators around. You know?
Okay.
Like, kind of no question. Like it's not even a question. Like, Final Fantasy, whatever, like, at this day and age, yeah, it's going to have a great script. Probably. Probably. Don't listen to the chuds on Twitter. They're going to scream and cry about Metaphor and Unicorn Overlord. That's what a ridiculous conversation that turned into. And it's always the people that have anime profile pics and don't speak Japanese that get so bent out of shape about this shit.
Let him know, Rick. Let him know. Talk to the people.
I love Unicorn Overlord. I think it's a great game.
But no, it looks beautiful. But no, I think that I wouldn't be surprised if this game was written in English like first and then translated to Japanese.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me either.
But yeah, that's Fragile's backstory. She is a hero. And Sam finally accepts the crypto buyout from her and eats it. Kind of like nicely. And they don't do any ham-fisted things calling it out. They just let it happen. And it's like, yes, this is how it should be. This is a very sweet moment. It's very nice. Shortly thereafter, a chiral spike occurs. A giant tornado comes out, sucks Sam into the sky. Raining debris is everywhere. Whales are flying down. And he's transported somewhere to this like battlefield. And this is like, I mean, one of the best things about Death Stranding is the imagery. It's just striking. This is so far one of the coolest scenes in the game to me. We see this inky black sea, in the trenches of a battlefield, and this man just rises out of the tar. He's got tendrils coming out of like umbilical cords attached to these skeleton soldiers in soldier garb. The skeletons catch on fire, which is just universally badass. And the man just looks forward at the camera. He looks totally hostile. It's Mads Mikkelsen. It's the guy we've been seeing in our dreams. And notably, he's got a scar on his navel just like Sam.
Which is super interesting. I think that all of the Unger episodes, every instance of running into Mads Mikkelsen, you're treated to some of the most interesting visceral imagery in the game, particularly with where his character is and what's actually the context of what he's working through.
Oh yeah, the next one where he's like more quote unquote himself and like more in control. Holy shit, dude. Like these episodes, and they're very short too. Short, action-packed, just the coolest imagery. What happens in this episode 4 is Unger, it's super short. You're just navigating to get out of this battlefield, which I mean, this isn't a spoiler. It's a beach. This is a beach of some sort. Everybody's got their own beach. Something that we learn about the lore of the beaches is that it's like, it's the afterlife, right? Like everybody's got their own beach. This is something that I think, I thought about this in like middle school, so I'm assuming everybody does because I don't think I have ever had an original thought of my own. But like, beaches, everybody has their own beach when they die. It's like a sort of purgatory of sorts. And it's influenced, its look is influenced by your beliefs, your ideologies, your religion, things like that. And this beach is a battlefield for reasons we hear more about later. But this Unger guy is like in a web of barbed wire, and he comes out. Baby dolls are caught like flies in the barbed wire web, and he is directing these soldiers and coming at you himself, talking about getting the BB back and trying to kill you. It's crazy. I love it. This is so cool.
Section. I love all of those sections with Cliff. So, yeah, especially that first one, like you mentioned. Come on, flaming skeletons. I think that's also when he does like the shush, like little, what you see in a lot, like some of the trailers that you've seen before. Yeah, he's like And then he sends them all out to fight. I'm just like, oh, I'm getting chills. I'm getting chills thinking about it.
Yeah, it is so cool. This episode ends pretty quickly, but I had fun. This is like the first real like gunfight you get in this game too. So does this play like Metal Gear games then?
Not terribly. I mean, it plays like a Metal Gear game if, you know, you got caught and then you got to kind of shoot your way out. But for this one specifically, it's a lot more of, all right, you've been trekking in the Icelandic wilderness for a couple of hours. Here's some shooty bang bang, because this is before the at least if you played through the first game before the director's cut, and someone in the comments can tell me if I'm wrong, but I'm like 90% sure there wasn't the firing range in the room for the original game. So if you wanted to go try out weapons, you had to just go out and try out weapons. So this is really your first time, if you were playing the 2019 version, to be like, all right, kind of let loose, get into a gunfight.
Interesting.
Will, how hard did you play on the hardest difficulty?
No.
Did you find this? Okay.
No, I didn't remember there were like difficulty sliders in this one. I just played through whatever the game started me on.
That might have been the director's cut thing where they had that in there. But yeah, I remember this being pretty fun. I didn't play on the hardest difficulty. I lowered it down to easy. I'm not even going to, front, for our listeners, but it was more of a time thing than anything else. But I did find this, I didn't really ever run into any hiccups, whenever I was going through this, but I definitely felt this like was challenging. It made me, it definitely gave me like Ghost Recon vibes, similar, or maybe, old Splinter Cell vibes when I was going through and like managing those enemies. It's good. It's good stuff.
This episode ends with only like a minute having passed. Mama will say, like, who is speaking to you via your cufflinks. You tell her what happened, and she's like, Sam, it's only been like a second since we last talked. Are you okay? So obviously, this is concerning. So you're going to her lab to figure out what's going on. So before we talk Mama, let's talk a couple things that happen in this episode that are not related to her as a person. Chiralium spikes keep happening, and what we learn is that these are going to continue happening and get worse the more we connect people to the network. At least this is Mama's theory. And she's like, and this could in turn eventually cause another Death Stranding, which immediate red flags, because we are, one, doing this on behalf of Bridges / Amelie / Hardman, and two, we were kind of strong-armed into it and not really given a choice. So if that is true, if we are connecting things and that is causing spikes that could cause another Death Stranding, it sounds like somebody wants the world to end, and maybe Hardman or Bridges is in on it. We don't really know, but it's interesting.
I'm trying to remember if they mentioned at that point too. Was it the spikes happening because of the handcuff being like overloaded or broken? So, which is why another reason for you to go talk to Mama so that you can try to get it fixed up. Can't remember if they brought that up at that point.
That wasn't my interpretation of the chiral spikes. I perceive like the chiralium that's in the atmosphere as a kind of like network that the UCA has like learned somehow, some way to leverage as a source of power. And I think that when you're connecting these facilities, it's the usage of that chiralium, like going back and forth, that's causing that density of spikes to happen. But there's also, I think, more narrative context that gets revealed later on as to why these spikes keep happening as well.
It's something to do with the Cupid too, and Mama was one of the programmers for the Cupid, which is what's connecting us to the network.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of it too. That's kind of like, I mean, it's not like a direct reason. It's kind of like a secondary reason that fuels the plot forward, I think. I might have also just not read the proper files. But that's one thing. Another thing here, Amelie, this is something I alluded to earlier. Amelie comes to visit Sam in the night, which, by the way, it's a chiralgram. That's, something in this future chiral network internet thingy is people can appear via a chiralgram. It's like think Star Wars Episode 1, where they're appearing in those blue images. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, like the little hologram.
Thank you.
You're my only hope, Obi-Wan. Yep.
Yes, exactly. You'd think after podcasting for so long I would be better at talking. But she comes to visit Sam in the night, and she says that, Higgs came, Higgs took me, everybody in Edge Knot City is dead, there's VTs everywhere, she can't escape, and she's like, Sam, you've got to keep connecting. You've got to keep connecting. Now, keep in mind what we just learned about this, that connecting is going to cause more chiral instability, possibly a new Death Stranding. Keep that in mind. Also, this is where Sam, in one of the previous flashbacks into Sam's dreams, we saw like a young ephebic Sam give Amelie a dream catcher, which she generally wears. He calls it a kipu. That's like the word for it. And he says, Amelie, where's your kipu? And she ignores him. She just keeps talking. Sam, you've got to connect everybody. You've got to connect us. Amelie, your kipu, where is it? Sam, they've got me. I'm here. There are BTs everywhere. Where is your kipu, Amelie? And she just will not answer him. So so this is not Amelie. It's definitely not Amelie. It's either an imposter, it's a pre-recorded message, or if it is Amelie, we have to assume that she does not have our best interest at heart. I mean, it seems obvious to me. I don't know.
Yeah, it is definitely one of those grand mysteries of the Death Stranding game in general. As you're kind of going through, you see that something's wrong. Obviously, Sam asking that question and not getting answers kind of gives you some red flags as long as you're still locked into the overall story. So it's one of those nuggets you like put in the back of your head. The game's going to make me progress regardless. It's not like it's giving you options to say yay or nay. But you're like, there's something off, and I effectively am, not that I need to, but I am going to get to the bottom of it just through gameplay.
Right. One last thing, and Will, this is something that you had mentioned a little bit ago, I'm pretty sure, or maybe it was both of you, but we learned a little bit more about the BB tech. Deadman dug this up. He wasn't asked to, and we get the impression that he shouldn't have, and he shouldn't know this. But we learned that the BB tech was originally had by the Separatists, the folks against the UCA. Bridges ended up adopting the tech even though they didn't understand it because they wanted to fight back against the Separatists. They were trying to steer BTs into our path, and Bridges decided to fight fire with fire. And Deadman thinks that our BB-28, was used for this purpose, and that's why he can't find the service records. Another interesting thing is the BB experiments around the original Death Stranding were approved and funded by the U.S. government, which is very fascinating. It ended up that project with the BBs ended up getting canned because of the public outcry against the concern, the ethics of it all. But it ended up being continued on the hush-hush on the orders of President Bridget Strand.
Dun, dun, dun. Yeah, it's one of those moments where you're going through and you're like, oh no, the pieces are piecing together.
Government bad?
Question mark?
Yeah. Yeah, the more we find out about it, the more that's called into question of both Bridget and Amelie's, where their loyalties, where their interests actually lay, in seeing the continuation of like the UCA in the world. To greater or lesser degrees, I think it's pulled off well here. But yeah, no, I thought that the backstory about like, the inception of the BBs and like what they're using. It is interesting to me. I will say though, it's like Deadman, every time he's, on the scene, like I like his character. The way that his writing kind of shakes out just kind of makes me want to shake my screen a little bit, but that's okay. We're moving forward, and it gets us where we need to be.
See, I like him more the more we go on, up until like, I don't know, we're going to hear more about him pretty soon. Let's talk Mama for the moment. Mama has a BT baby attached to her. So how about that? That's a thing.
Yeah.
that is a thing.
It's pretty crazy.
We get a flashback. She explains what happened, which I thought was pretty effective. I don't know about you two, but the terrorists hit the hospital that Mama was at when she was going to give birth. She was in for a C-section. The terrorists hit. She was like crumbled under rubble while pregnant. You don't like see her. You just see her head under rubble. She's calling for help. She drinks Timefall like to survive, which like how? That would presumably kill you pretty quick, right?
Right.
I don't know. That's one of those like
it's one of those like question mark things. Because it rapidly ages things, so you would think it ages your insides, but it's like, I don't know, maybe if it doesn't touch you on the outside, it doesn't.
If you digest it, it doesn't matter. Kojima, what a fucking genius. Generational talent.
That or she just has 80-year-old organs now, and
Yeah.
she's walking around with like old smoker lungs.
After every meal, she needs a digestif.
Oh goodness! Yeah, just pop a couple of Tums in some water and call it a day.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she ends up giving birth in the rubble. The baby is dead. It's like a BT baby. And this is kind of like, this is explained as we go forward. It's kind of explained a little bit beforehand. It kind of just depends on what files you're reading. But BTs are kind of, oh boy, really making me question whether or not I know this or not. They're dead. Like, they are dead life forms that are kind of crossing over into the world of the living. Is that accurate?
Yep, that's correct.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
So when Mama's baby died, she gave birth to a BT. Why it's attached to her is unclear.
It's effectively that kind of halfway point of the BBs themselves, how they're born to the still mothers, but they have that connection to the mother's womb by going into that machine that you put BB in.
Oh, yeah. It's kind of an inverse of that relationship.
Exactly. It's exactly an inverse. Instead of the, brain dead mom and alive, quote unquote, baby, it's the dead baby and a living mom. So it's an inverse of that BB that you're already kind of used to.
And here's something interesting. Sam kind of recoils at this. Sam kind of looks at her differently. And he says, because she now takes care of this BB, like it hinders her work, it hinders her life. It's obviously a physical manifestation of her not being able to let go of the past, not moving on from grief. And Sam says,
and you're okay with that? I mean, she's gone. You want to live your life in the shadow of the dead?
Her response to him, she says,
"Come on. You, of all people, you chose the dead over the living. Why else would you be here?"
What does that mean?
What does it mean precisely, Rick?
You find out later. I know I feel like I'm saying that a million times, but that's how this game unravels, unfortunately, is like, they throw out lines and you be like, what the hell is even that? And then in 10 hours, you'll be like, oh, okay, that's what that was.
What I like about it is they drop that there and they don't linger on it. Like, they don't make it a big, like, what does that mean? They just move on, which that is good writing. Just drop that and move on. Let the audience think about it. Like, don't grab us by the shirt collar again and say, did you catch that? You know, they just move on.
Yeah, they didn't have Norman Reedus stare at the camera and do a little wink when they were going over that line read.
They didn't have Norman Reedus say, and this is what you mean, and Mama gives a thumbs up and a little heart comes up and you get that.
I will say, though, that Mama, I think, is arguably one of my favorite characters of this cast here. I think that she is pulled off really well, like what you were saying with the flashback with her being under the rubble. I think also, one of her character is one of the most important characters to like the thesis of the game that Kojima is trying to drive home to us about like connectivity and like what it means to be connected. And I think it's a relatively interesting conversation, like you said as well, Rick, is that hanging on to the past, hanging on to things that aren't necessarily healthy for us to be able to live in the present or live in this future. And I think that is one of the more effective things, especially because of the fact that like it leads to her being able to give Sam another tool, another viscera, like the actual act of like what her character is. There's a lot of show and not as much tell in this chapter with Mama, and I really appreciated that, because that has not largely been the experience up to this point.
And if you don't mind me saying so, Margaret Qualley, she's a pretty lady.
She's so
Very
fine.
pretty lady.
She's so fine.
Correct.
So fine. She's so fine. Just kidding. Let's get back to the story. We respect women around here. I respect them so much I'm too afraid to talk to them.
We respect women on PBR.
But I do like, but we were talking about Mama's story. I think Mama's story was just like how we just recently talked about a Fragile Story as well. Every time I get a flashback, I know very often, flashback is, the writer's, cowardly way of explaining stories, something. I love all the flashbacks in this game. Anytime you take me back a couple of years to be like, what was this person doing to kind of make them the way that they are? I feel like it hits in this game every single time. And Mama's especially being such of a holding on to the past story. And then her workstation, her laboratory that she's in is the destroyed hospital where, she gave birth to the BT baby. And she's like, yeah, I'm still here. Like effectively walking and living around your trauma is just really intense for me. So I just really like her character a lot.
And she's got more trauma that we learn about here. We meet Mama's sister, Lochna. I think Kojima and his team did something super cowardly with this, but we meet Lochna. Mama's real name is Malingan, by the way. Malingan and Lochna. Lochna is very against the UCA. They just so happen to be twins, like literally identical twins. They just so happen to both be scientific geniuses. They both have dooms. You'll see what I mean by this is extremely cowardly in a minute here. Here's what happened. Neither Lochna nor Mama can have children. Lochna's partner died, and with her eggs and his frozen sperm that they happened to have for some reason, they put the baby inside of Mama, who carried it to term. When it died in the accident, she couldn't bring herself, and Will, please correct me on this if I'm wrong, or Nick, I mean, either of you can, she couldn't bring herself to tell Lochna about it. And now, with these new cord cutters that Mama gives to Sam, Sam is going to break the bond, the umbilical cord, between Mama and the little BT to give Mama closure and to allow her to move on. She asks Sam to do it. It's clearly a really difficult choice for her. It's really interesting. The way they use tears in this game is very interesting. It kind of becomes normalized because you learn that it's a chiral reaction. But when you turn here and Mama like tells Sam to cut the cord and she's crying, I don't know. I thought that was extremely moving. Because, I mean, you know that that's not a chiral reaction. That's true. That's genuine. That's real.
Yeah. Actual tears. So, no, it's good. I love both of those characters there. And then, sorry, Nick, not to get you, but just for like more of that backstory on Malignan and Lochna. I'm sure I butchered Malignan a little bit there. But the backstory is interesting. I love that they're the twins. I know you said it's the cowardly based on what happens next, but I think it just really sets it up well, specifically because of how they talk about that twin connection. You know, that's so common in media that we hear about, but yeah, they could always, you know, hear each other's thoughts and know what the other person's thinking and do all that. But after the BT incident with the hospital, that connection was severed. So she just has been not only separated physically, but mentally and emotionally and spiritually from her sister since having the baby. And that's why it's another reason why it's so strong and such a tearful reaction from her when that cord is cut.
It's another avenue that they're going down towards the reconnecting everybody, right? They're not just reconnecting society, they're reconnecting personal relationships, familial relationships.
Yep.
Something that I did want to ask you, Rick, and something that I haven't, had the opportunity to really research myself, because that was one of the things that I was really curious about from an imagery perspective, and maybe something that I'm expecting too much or maybe reading into too much, is like the narrative use or the thematic usage of tears in media. Like, is there any archetypal symbolism behind the usage of tears? Because it's not only represented in characters. Sam is crying all the time as a reaction to being exposed to chiral matter. Like almost every single core character in every other cutscene, the camera will shift, they'll turn their face, and you'll see a single tear like run out of the side of their cheek. And they don't seem visibly stressed, which is what makes Lochna's experience here so much more visceral as she's going forward, with what's happening and what she's asking Sam to do. When people are experiencing these spikes of emotions, like, it really does call out. But I was curious to see if like there's any actual symbolism. Like, does it mean something like a shifting of thought patterns or a shifting of emotions overall, because it's also represented in Higgs, like, and you see this as well in Death Stranding too, and I'd be curious to see what that actually like means for him. But it's almost like his face is painted, like, and he's permanently has like tears coming down his face. It's curious.
Well, I admit that I did not think about this, which is, I'm kind of not doing my due diligence here. I did not meet the bare expectations. So I'm just thinking of this on the spot, so it's probably wrong. But we're thinking about this new society where isolation is the norm. Kojima has taken a natural bodily response that is associated with bouts of emotion, and has turned it into this very scientific, very cold thing. It plays with the idea of isolation to create a society that is really cold and really calculated and uncaring. It's stripping the human experience out of our current world. And I think, to me, that it plays with that in tandem. And it creates a reality here where tears do not represent emotion at all. They're just something that happens as a reaction to this chiral density. We're in an isolated society. Everybody's just by themselves, and we're not. It's not a big deal. Everybody for themselves. We don't have that human connection anymore, and people just cry. It doesn't mean anything. So when we see Mama crying and we can assume it's for real, that it's powerful precisely because it goes against the world that Kojima set up. I don't know if that means anything. I don't know if that's a good take or not. I haven't really thought about it too deeply, but that's kind of my initial read on it.
Yeah. This comes from Michael Stern on contemplating archetypes and the judge and the tear. And he has to say here is that tears are droplets of letting go. Often the tear is what is needed in order for a situation to break into its next level of intimacy and vulnerability. I thought that was just interesting.
Droplets of letting go is a beautiful phrase.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what's happening here. I mean, Mama is making the decision to let go. She's making the decision to no longer hold on to this, in some ways selfish, in some ways very human idea of the past. She is now letting go, and she lets go very literally because this eventually kills her. Before it does, we get into our second boss fight with Higgs. It's the same as before, except it's a lion instead of a kraken. He just kind of shows up and you have to fight him with Mama on your back, which, by the way, you transport her in a body bag for some reason.
Yeah, it's just like when you had your mom at the beginning. I think that's just, I suppose, the proper way to transport people / bodies is in that kind of like mummified.
Just like with
seat.
your mom, just like with the chiral artist, whenever you take her to her boyfriend.
The girlfriend to the boy. That was a fun one. I love that. And like you can see her little face sticking out.
If we have the technology to have people be in these little wrapped bags and get on Sam's back, why can't they just wear a suit and run behind Sam?
I mean, they probably can, but if you get grabbed by a BT, it's all over. They can't see BTs.
But that's his responsibility, right? Like you avoid the BTs with the people, right?
Yeah, but the thing is, Sam, if I'm leading you as a shepherd through BT infested territory, instead of having you behind me or start to freak out when you see flowers melting because of BT stomping around and having you then run off in a direction and get blown up, I'll just stick you on my back, and that way wherever I go, you go. I go, you go.
I feel like we've done this in so many other games, though, and it literally is just an AI, like an NPC that's following around. And don't get me wrong, this is unique to Death Stranding. You don't really do this in almost any other game. So, like, shout out to Kojima for that. But just like, thinking about this realistically on like what we would be doing in a world like this, like, why are they not? They could be in their own little vehicle or something like that. And then when a BT comes around, Sam just deals with it.
That's what I don't know. It makes sense for me. I feel like that makes a lot of sense, especially what you talked about there with the AI, because we've all seen, even in good games, The Last of Us, other games that have like an AI companion, as good as they look and as good as they do, we've all had instances of them running through or right in front of an enemy, and the game has to ignore them. Otherwise, you're going to get pissed off because the computer's making a mistake. Another super common one, Dead Rising. Whenever you have to move characters from like one spot of the map to the other, they all do the stupidest thing they can think of. So if I'm in a game where you running into a BT causes a void out, can you imagine how pissed people would be if, I was doing really well and then this character stepped to the right and got blown up?
Yeah, but like, from the lore of this game, though, I mean, you're traversing over miles and miles and miles of land, and not of which all is BT territory. So like if your thing pops up, you would think it would be a situation where it's like, okay, this person would clock it and recognize, oh, time to get on Sam's back. Let's go do this so we can manage this situation and I can come out safe. And it just seems like so much more of an efficient thing for them as an individual to like follow Sam around. That way, hypothetically you could carry more cargo, whatever the case may be. I don't know. It's just in my mind, it seems interesting. What do I know?
It's pretty much what I say every time we record one of these. So you can either, I don't know if you can escape the BT. I think you have to fight it. I'm not 100% sure, but you get around it either way. And you're taking Mama back to Lochna to reunite the two of them. I had something really hilarious happen here where I was driving on a trike, and as you're going, Mama will start opining about a tender backstory. She talks about being conjoined twins with Lochna, about how they're so close. And as she's talking about this, my battery was running out, and Sam would just interject every now and then with like, low on juice here. And she'll be like, and we've always had this connection, and he'll be like, getting real low, we're gonna run out. And it came off as him being like, all right, shut up now.
Yep. His social battery was running out, and he's like, I am tired of talking to you.
You take her back, you reunite them, and Mama dies here. And here's where I said that it gets a little cowardly. Because what happens is Mama's spirit reunites with Lochna. The two of them literally become one. And I mean that literally, like they are the same actor. They always have been. They're both scientific geniuses. They both have dooms. When you speak to Lochna later, she says things that only Mama could know. And Sam's like, Mama, is that you? And she's like, you got me, Sam. Now you won't have to catch Lochna up. We've joined. We're together. We've become one. And they spoon feed you the connection angle too. They say, quote, no point in trying to draw a connection. Mulligan, Lochna, we're all connected, Sam. Remember that. It's just too much for me. And this also goes along with like my idea that creators are afraid to let their characters die. I don't want to spoil anything, but like certain JRPGs from the Super Nintendo, where the main character dies and you can resurrect them. It's like, really? It's just, I just find it really cowardly. I don't know.
It's okay if people die, and I think that we need to get a little bit more comfortable with that. I think that like the more of an issue that I had with this fact is that what is the narrative reason for having Mama die? Like there's literally no other reason than just like
to make
Kojima said
the players cry.
Yeah.
That's kind of it. To make the players cry, to make them feel something, and to do the connection angle.
Yeah.
And to be clear, I think what makes it cowardly is the fact that she functionally doesn't die because she is replaced by an identical copy.
Yeah.
And the big thing is that the connection is the big angle for it. And we had talked about before, they had that spiritual connection because they were originally conjoined, separated, removed, and then now this is the act of them coming back together. So that's why I thought it was really nice, especially like they had two different colored eyes the whole time, and then once they finally have that merge, they get the heterochromia. So each of them has, each of their eyes are both there on Lochna now. So I always thought that was pretty interesting. But the big thing too is, aside from the connectivity part, is that these two characters, you had Mama, who was effectively with that BT the whole time, should have died in that rubble and didn't. But having her last just long enough to get back to her twin, make that reuniting moment, make that connection, and then effectively dying. But like you said, not effectively, because we're all together here. Down here we all float. I thought it was sweet. It resonated with me, but I understand where you're coming from as far as being like, oh no, it's like we never lost Mama. But it's like, really, you're kind of getting the best of both worlds.
And again, just to steelman Kojima again, that's what he's going for. He's not going for intellectual rigor. He's not going for exhaustive interpretation. He wants to make his players feel something. And I mean, I don't mean to speak for him, but as far as he's concerned, it seems if he does that, then it's a success. And he has clearly done that, even me who like some of this, it doesn't work at all. I mean, the Mama scenes were really touching, I felt something. So mission accomplished for him.
What did you think about their usage of the Ha and the Ka in the ancient Egyptian spiritual language that they were going into that?
I want to save that for next time.
Okay.
If that's cool.
Yeah.
Partly because I completely ran out of time and did not do the research into that I wanted to. But that is a good cliffhanger for next time. I do want to open next time talking about the Ha and the Ka and how they're incorporating it into Death Stranding.
Sounds great.
But that brings us into Chapter 6, Episode 6, Dead Man. We're going to learn more about Dead Man over the next two chapters. This opens, Dead Man takes the BB because it's getting too attached to this side of the world, right? It's getting too attached to Sam. Remember, it's just a tool, according to Dead Man. But now Sam is loving it like a real baby. And it's starting to grow, it's gaining weight, it's self-actualizing, the whole nine. It's turning into a real little baby boy. or, baby thing. Sam protests a little bit, but Deadman just takes it. And he says he's going to fix it. Sam, that's kind of Sam throughout the whole game. He protests a little bit, but then he just rolls over. This scene is also really interesting. I laughed at this at first, how they set this up. Deadman walks into your shower.
Oh my God, best scene in the game.
Clothes
best
on,
scene in the game.
And he just waits for you to come up, and then he ushers you in, gets in with you, puts his hand like by your head and gets up to you like he's about to make out with you, like get real hot and heavy, and he turns the shower on. Well, is this supposed to be funny? This was hilarious.
It was, it made me extremely uncomfortable, but I thought it was absolutely just hilarious. I was just like,
great.
what? Guillermo del Toro, what are you doing to poor Norman Reedus? Leave that kid alone. Leave him alone.
It is very intense, though. He flips it on, and they're both still fully clothed.
Yeah.
But he does this because this is the only way they can talk without, their voices being recorded and, like, Hardman potentially hearing them,
Yeah.
Because that's set up early on. Remember, like, unless Sam is showering or taking a shit, like, they can monitor everything he's doing. Like, total surveillance state, right?
Yeah, no privacy.
He wants to talk to us in here. He says, despite the BBs being banned and discontinued after the government experiments caused a void out, the testing continued on orders of President Strand. She wanted to use them for the chiral network to facilitate travel to the beach. And now the question is, what the hell is Die Hardman's part in this? Nobody knows anything about him. Sam doesn't even know what he looks like. This is the first time they acknowledge his mask. He's like, he's been wearing that since I met him. Nobody knows what his part in this is. And nobody knows why Bridges is being so shifty and secretive about everything. So Deadman is starting to doubt this organization.
Government bad?
Government still bad? Question mark.
It's one of the wait a minute. Are we the baddies?
Yeah, I will say, something that I thought was really interesting about this, in that we didn't necessarily touch on earlier, but like this part of the game is particularly cool because of, first of all, what it does to the player diegetically in terms of what it kind of requires you to do with Deadman taking the BB so he can work on them. I'm sorry if you didn't already cover that, Rick, but something that I did want to underscore and kind of highlight as a personal favorite, or like a really interesting moment for me of kind of like aligning with Sam and really warming up to him as a character. Norman Reedus plays this character as incredibly stoic, similar to what we were talking about with Troy Baker, playing Higgs. Like, there's a conversation on whether or not, this was the interpretation of the actor or the actual writing itself. Norman Reedus typically does play, dark and quiet, strong silent type.
Yeah, he was born to play Sam Porter Bridges and what's his face from The Walking Dead. Like, I swear he was born for these roles.
Yeah, 100%. But one of the things that I thought was the most powerful, and that happens naturally, and something that I love when games do this, and this has occurred in the other games, but there is a fondness, there is a relationship forming between Sam and the BB throughout, like, this entire, like, all the way up through these chapters up until chapter 6. And like, you start forming an actual connection, and Sam, similar to what you were saying when you were driving with Mama, he's talking to the BB sometime, being like, you're all right there, kid, especially when you get in really intense, stressful moments with a BT, and then you have to like use that mechanic to soothe the BB and like rock it back and forth. And, or even when you're in the room and you tap the actual container that BB is in, and you're just like, you're kind of worn out, aren't you? It's like the small things that he says to BB, like, over time, that make you realize that Sam is like very attached to this child, and he does see it like a child, not a piece of equipment. And I thought that's like it was one of the really strong moments, because it was a huge visceral reaction that I had when Guillermo del Toro was like, I'm going to take this BB and I'm going to augment it back to its default settings. And I'm like, what the fuck? No, you're not. And then Sam has that same moment with Deadman where he's like struggling with the actual container of BB. And I thought that was really well done.
I do admit that doesn't work for me because I didn't really, I'm going to sound like a monster. I did not really interact with the baby too much,
Rick.
If it got not toxoplasmosis gondii, that's the cat poop thing. What is it? Toxoanemia?
Something like that. From the BTs, you just let it rock out. You didn't care.
I didn't. I mean, I went back if it had that happen. I don't care. That's a me failing though. That's a Rick failing. That's not a Kojima and team failing. That's a Rick problem. We've established that in the first episode that these babies creep me out.
Don't worry, Rick. Everybody knows you don't like babies.
That's true. That's true. I don't.
Rick, the famous baby hater.
Oh my God.
That's totally why I'll never have children. It's not because I'm a gross monster. There was a running joke that we had early in the show where we would like just say a random thing on the show and we would be like, yeah, this is a pro blank podcast, you know? Yeah, this is a pro Kojima podcast, or yeah, this is a pro whatever podcast. And there is some early episode that Mikey from the Discord always references where, and it was in context. We were like, yeah, this is a pro Shaking Babies podcast. And Mikey brings it up every now and then. He won't let it go.
That's such a Mikey thing to key in on.
Yeah, Mikey, the person that regularly responds to Discord messages from like 2022. This episode ends. We're going to go into another episode with Clifford Unger. Episode 7 is titled Clifford. We're going back to this remote cabin where Deadman is doing testing on Lou. By the way, I love how they introduce this. Sam just calls the BB Lou at some point. They don't focus on it. They don't make a big thing out of it. He just calls him Lou. Deadman doesn't even like acknowledge it. He just keeps going. But it plants that seed in your ear, you know, and now you're like, what did he mean by that? And when you get up to the cabin to get the baby back, remember, Mama told us, you know, these chiral spikes, these supercells are going to keep happening. We get up there, wouldn't you know it, another tornado, another thing sucks us into the sky. This time, Deadman and Sam are both in there with the BB, and Unger is decked out in full army gear. He's smoking a cig. He looks cool as hell. He is ready to fuck shit up. He is going to tear us up. I love this chapter so much. It's so good.
Close enough. Welcome back, Solid Snake.
There you go. Save that for part 2.
I think let's just talk about this a little bit, and we'll pick up in this episode for the final episode. We'll pick up in this chapter for the final episode. No, these are episodes. God damn. I'm so confused.
I can't do it. No good.
Thank you. The silence is really encouraging, folks.
I was like, he's going to cut it.
This is another battle with Cliff Unger. It's much harder this time. I lost, I think, twice on this time. You ring up Deadman. Deadman has the BB. Deadman activated the BB, despite like not liking them very much, because he doesn't want to die. You got to go out. You got to go back and get him because, you know, Unger is looking for the BB. Unger doesn't really care about Sam or Deadman. He wants the BB back. So you're like, you know, Deadman, you got to hang tight. And Deadman will just start talking about why his life is hard. And I'm like, dude, now is not the time, my guy. He's like,
Sam, it's not easy being me. No wife, no children, no friends. And so I sought solace, sought company in the dead. Over time, I made them a part of me, 70% of who I am today. But meeting you has opened my eyes. You're very special, Sam.
And I'm just like, my guy, you have got grenades and hellfire raining down on you. Now is not the time.
That's exactly the time, Rick. This is when you let your soul bare when you're on the verge of death.
Maybe, I mean, everybody's getting a little emotional here. Deadman is getting emotional. He's getting attached to the baby. He kind of doesn't want to give him back to Sam for a second there. It's really quick, but like, you know, he kind of protests a little bit. He holds on to him a little bit.
Yeah.
But, you know, you do get him back. You take on Cliff. This ends with Sam and Clifford like scrapping fisticuff style a little bit. Sam grabs his dog tags and Sam gets a really good look at it. It's very clear that Sam can read it, but we, the audience, can't. I love when, you know, movies do that. I love when they make it clear that the audience doesn't know something, but the characters do. Is that dramatic irony? Or is that when the audience knows and the characters don't? I don't know.
I feel like that's the latter, yeah, when the audience knows and the characters don't. But yeah, I love it. It's like very similar to Tarantino when like the trunk, what's in the trunk, right? And, you know, all the characters see it, but you're just left to wonder, like, what the hell are they actually looking at?
Vincent, we happy?
Yeah, we happy.
Oh, we happy.
That's such a good movie. I haven't seen that in ages.
Yeah.
Man. Let's end with this. Let's end with Sam's backstory revealed. You get back to the private room. You successfully get out of the World War II beach. Deadman, admittedly, this is clumsy, as you know, dialogue. He's explaining Sam's backstory to Sam, and it's for the benefit of the players. But Deadman says that he looked up some records, and it doesn't name Sam, but it's very obvious it's Sam. Somebody from Bridges, an employee from Bridges, their pregnant wife got caught in a void out. And the employee tried to get to her in time but couldn't. Everybody at Bridges died. Everybody there died except for that Bridges employee. And Deadman says, people wanted answers. The man hid his wife's body on purpose. The only survivor was the only suspect. He was easy to blame, and people did. And pretty soon they were blaming Bridges too. The man felt responsible, so he left. And Sam says, didn't happen. Because like you both said, he's the laconic, rough and tough guy. He doesn't talk about his feelings or his past. But
fake news.
One thing that I have a question here, like, do people think that the void out was intentional that happened there? That's how it made it sound, right? Like they're blaming Sam. Like, do they think it was his fault? Like, what would that accomplish?
Yeah, generally void outs in a city, because it's gotten to the point where people know what's going on. And we saw at the beginning with the whole corpse patrol, somebody dies, kills himself, what have you. It's almost like a second nature. Okay, get the corpse disposal out here. We'll take him out. So if something does does happen in a city, generally someone thinks that it's done on purpose. Not that necessarily the dead person wanted to do it, but it could even be like, hey, there's some terrorists out here causing trouble and doing issues. Okay.
That was the only part that confused me a little bit. Like yeah, I feel for Sam. And, by the way, that's why Sam is so attached to this BB. Sam was going to name his unborn son Lou. That's why he calls BB Lou. And I love that they let that slip, like, and they didn't even call it. Like, when this team wants to do good writing, and good, what does that even mean? What does it mean when Rick Firestone of Nowhere, Pennsylvania says good writing?
It means a lot to me. It means a lot to me, Rick.
Yeah, it means a lot to you and like 4 people that listen to this show. But you know what I mean, right? Like who's to say what's good and what's not? Like when this team wants to do something subtle, they can. It's just they really like deploying the like cheesy action movie, like 90s grab you by the shirt collar, like that kind of dialogue. They love to do it, but they are capable of doing really cool moments like that. When he just says Lou and Deadman keeps going and the player is like, hold on, what? He said what now? And then you learn here, he's facing horrific trauma because his unborn son and his wife died. Like, oh, holy shit. Yeah. Actually, that's why he left everybody. That's why he walked away, because he couldn't bear to confront that horrible truth, and everything reminded him of them.
And just as a clear up there, it's his daughter. The unborn daughter is Louise. Lou is just short for Louise.
Do not think that they clarify that as far as I am in the game, actually.
I think it's up to that point, because he mentions that a little bit there. I don't think they say Louise.
They say it at the very end of this game, Will. I'm like 90% sure they don't reveal the full name until the end of the game.
Okay.
I mean,
I could be wrong.
The gender of the baby doesn't matter. I mean, the baby was going to be born and the baby was going to be named Lou. The point is, like, Sam had progeny that he was going to unleash onto the earth. He was going to be a papa,
Mm-hmm.
Papa Sam.
Nick, this is 2025. Gender is not that important, man.
Whoa, damn, you're right. I'm 0 for 3. 0 for 3. Get me out of here, Rick.
I'm just kidding, buddy. I'm just kidding. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to make you a punching bag.
In the group chat. People are going to post about me in the venting and Shaq posting channel.
No, I can't let you get canceled. Then who's going to send me funny Japanese women on Instagram Reels?
Well, listen, hold on.
This is my first time hearing about this. Hold on.
There are a lot of Japanese comedians, and only Rick is able to share in this algorithmic surprise that I get to delight in.
That's true. I www every time. It's a little joke for our Japanese speaking friends. Anyway, wow, what a way to end this episode. But that's what we'll pick up next time. We'll finish up. We're going to learn about Deadman's past. We're going to learn about Hartman and his hilarious shtick of giving a thumbs up to the camera, looking at the camera, and giving a big like score on the screen, which, for as much as I poo-poo some of the writing, that cracked me up. Like, I was laughing out loud by the time that scene was over. We'll pick up there next time. We'll get to the end of the game. The game really takes off from here. And I want to reiterate, I'm having a much better time. I'm having a really good time. I think I will replay this game. When Death Stranding 2 comes to PC, I will replay this part 1 on PC. Then I'll probably forget about Death Stranding 2, even though I bought it. And then in like a year's time, I'll play it. But yeah, no, I'm having a good time. I'm really glad that you guys agreed to do this with me.
Thank you, Rick. I am curious though. Like, is there any reason why you would prefer to wait for PC as opposed to just playing it on your PlayStation?
No, mainly just because, like, if I'm gonna replay it, I want to give it some time, and you know, I don't want to dive into Death Stranding 2 right now. And if I do it on PC, then I'm gonna like do a really, really long playthrough where I like do as much building as possible, do as much deliveries as possible. Like I'm gonna really go hard with it.
Yeah, that checks out.
But yeah, that's where we'll pick up next time. Thank you, folks, for sticking around and listening. And thank you, Will and Nick, for sticking around and talking. This has been a lot of fun. I hope you guys are having as much fun as I am, like as good of a time as I am going through this. I know I'm asking a lot of time from the two of you, so it really means a lot that you guys are willing to do this and hang and chat so much. This has been really, really exciting, really fun.
Yeah, no worries at all, Rick. Anytime I get to shake a baby alongside next to you, I'm having a great day.
God.
So, listeners probably heard about you two last time. Friday Night Gamecast. Anything new on that front since we spoke last?
Yeah, absolutely. We actually just published this past Friday our episode collaboration that we did with No Small Games. We reviewed Coffee Talk episodes 1 and 2, and that is on all podcasting services. As of right now, I actually need to go in and do a little bit of work. There was a little bit of mix up in the edit there, but most of the episode is great. So I recommend everybody go wherever you get your podcast and go check that out. And you can find us over on Blue Sky at FNGC Pod.
Yeah, shout out to No Small Games, Emily and Kate. If you're a fan of those two fine ladies, stick around till October. They'll be around here, you know.
Fantastic. That's exciting.
Will, do you have anything to add on the Friday Night Gamecast line?
Not on the Gamecast line. I think Nick really hit it. We had that recent episode, which was a blast. So hopefully people go get a chance to listen to that good old Coffee Talk 1 and 2. But aside from that, we got a couple of other things lined up in the chamber here. So definitely be on the lookout for a couple of bang bangs that you'll hear before the year's out.
Awesome. I can't wait, and I hope the listeners check it out too. You can find links to Friday Night Gamecast in the episode description. You can find them on the Blue Sky, on Instagram, all of that good stuff. You can find links to our stuff as well. Come hang out in the Discord. That's a lot of fun. Talk about the episodes. It doesn't really happen all that often, but you can. You can just hang out with the community. It's a good time. You can find us on Blue Sky, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. And if you're so inclined, a rating and a review would be terrific as well. I don't check every single place, but I do check Spotify and Podcast Addict and Apple Podcasts. So if you'd be so inclined, that helps us get into Al Gore's rhythm and more folks discover us. So it would be pretty cool if you did, the words of Matthew McConaughey.
Yeah, be pretty cool if you did.
And on that note, thank you again, Will. Thank you again, Nick. Thank you again, listeners, for sticking around. This has been fun. And we will strand the last strand of our Strand Type podcast next week with the final installment. Till then, I am Rick. I am Rick Podman. I am your host, as always. We'll catch you next time. Signing off for now.
Keep on keeping on.
Keep on keeping on.